Okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. That clock is not correct. It's 5:01 probably. It's right there. And thank you everyone for coming. Your interest is good for us because it has this number of here. It's pretty boring stuff. Uh, so, number two is the overview of the village wastewater study. I think all of you were here at the last 30% about this, so I don't need to go way back to that. Today we have a couple of people from, I was forget what, yes. Yes, that's what I'm gonna give us the 60% preliminary engineering report. And I'll just remind folks that whatever they're coming up with, don't expect this is gonna be on the tax bill next year. It's not what this is about. It's a study that we're doing that you were lucky enough to get some funding to do it to not something quite big here in this town. And once the reports are all in, then we can the voters will decide if they want to do anything with this or if you look further or one of the options that will provide. So I guess it would be probably a good idea to listen to that presentation. And then we'll stay as long as we need to answer any questions that anybody has. So I guess unless somebody has anything else, any point that you want to be addressed before we start. Okay, go ahead. Let's take it over. We have, looks like we have one person on the
Yes, and she's been doing this one.
See the school.
Hi, for the folks who've joined us in Zoom, can you see the screen okay on your end? That's right, my screen is sharing, so easy.
So your screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's try to confirm.
Okay. Okay.
For we appreciate everyone participating in the various village wastewater. So tonight's meeting is an opportunity to share where the study stands for those of you who attended the 30% meeting. Earlier than that,
I can hardly hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
okay, I'll try. So tonight's meeting is an opportunity to share where the study stands right now. Review the work that was completed as part of the 30% report and everything that was discussed in the 30% meeting. And hear your questions and feedback. And I would also like to emphasize that this is part of an ongoing community driven planning process, as Jake said. And your input is an important part in shaping the next steps for this. So the first part of tonight's presentation is going to be a brief recap of earlier work, so everyone has the same baseline. The majority of tonight's discussion is going to focus on the new work that was completed as part of the 60% report, which is going to be the alternatives that were evaluated, the options that were evaluated for the wastewater system, and the cost comparisons and what happens next as the study moves on to the 90%. That's my audible now. All right, so as this was discussed in the last meeting as well, the main deliverable or the focus of the study is to produce a preliminary engineering report. And there are public or planning meetings that are required as part of this whole process at 30%, 60%, and 90% match, right? So we're currently at the 60% milestone, which is why we're having this meeting. Now, brief recap and overview of why this initiative was taken in the first place, why this study matters. I mean, as we all know here, that the village of Westfield currently relies on private individual on-site septic system for the wastewater treatment. There is no municipal wastewater system in the village of Westfield. And, many of these systems were installed decades ago, which were often before the modern permitting standards. So they don't comply necessarily with the updated permitting standards that we see. Now, the report that was completed with 30% place, and this was all discussed in the 30% meeting. Again, this is an overview of what was completed at 30% report. We talked about how many of these systems are located in areas that are subject to high groundwater and flooding, particularly near the Mississippi River. And these conditions particularly increase the risk of system failure, groundwater contamination, and odors and public health concerns, and so on. The study is also driven by future planning needs, including Vermont Act 181, which encourages infill development and increased housing density in the designated village center, Westfield, something that the current wastewater infrastructure in the village cannot support. Right. So what is included, or what's the focus of the study area is the designated village center and roughly the quarter-mile boundary extending from the designated village center, which is from the map, and then we went on for the study area focus earlier 50%. Now this area approximately has 71 parcels, 59 of which are residential, and then 12 are commercial or mixed use. We also talked about different environmental resources in Palm Springs, which play a very crucial role in evaluating different wastewater management solutions for the village of Westfield. The report identifies wetlands, floodplains, and associated with the Mississippi River, conserved lands, prime agricultural lands throughout and surrounding the study areas. And many of these areas are protected or they have development limitations, which limits the number of feasible locations where new wastewater infrastructure could be sited. But before we move on to different options and discussing the alternatives. We estimate the design flow, the basis of design, for that wastewater system. Now, wastewater flows were estimated, following the Vermont DEC's wastewater system and potable water supply rules. Current flows are estimated at approximately 31,000 gallons per day, which is based on residential bedroom counts and commercial use dumping stocking within the report. Looking ahead, the report also assumes a 6% population increase over the next 20 years, which is consistent with the recent census trends. And there's an additional 5% increase in the design flows, which is attributed to infill development. So together, these assumptions result in a future design flow of 35,000 gallons. With that, I will pass it over to Kevin, who will now talk about the alternatives.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Happy holidays to everyone. It's nice mild weather today, so it's an easy drive for us. So I don't have a lot to cover here. This is gonna be pretty quick. I'm gonna go over the two alternatives we looked at and plus the no action alternative. And I'm going to talk about the cost for each of the two alternatives. And that's gonna be primarily the initial construction cost to include design and permitting. All the things that come with it. And then also the operational costs over the life, so you can see the full picture of, you know, not just building it, but operating it. Okay, so there are two alternatives. The first alternative is the gravity sewer collection from Forest Main to the Troy pump station. So if you look at this, it's a little bit hard to see up close, but so the green would be the collection system, and that's gonna be mostly gravity collection. So you've got a pipe usually on the road, manholes spaced at certain intervals. Gravity flow, it doesn't quite show up, but going all the way down here to a pump station. So you'd be building a pump station and then pumping, and that's the kind of magenta purple line that goes up to here. And some of you may be aware of the pump station about 2 miles up the road. I want to say it's across the street from the fire station. Is it? Okay, maybe. So the idea is that you would collect it by mostly gravity, pump it to the Troy J pump station. They would then pump it the rest of the way to the treatment facility, and then they would handle all of the treatment and discharge under their existing Speedy's permit. So that's alternative one, and the associated cost with that is the collection system is about 3.5 million. Now, when I get to the next alternative, you're gonna notice this number is almost identical in both cases. It's about 3.5 million little collection system first. And then it's okay, what do we do with it? In this case, the conveyance to the pump station is another 2 million. To get it up the road, ways, and then there's some sort of soft costs. So you've got design, you've got permitting, you've got environmental concerns. We've got the cost of bonding. There's probably legal costs, and depending where you place this thing, there could be either acquisition of land or easement created, so there's a legal cost with that. So all the soft costs get added in there too. That ends up being about $8 million for that alternative. Any questions so far? Yes.
At the last meeting, they were talking about different types of sewage collection, like waste and liquid, or just waste. What kind of system are you talking about?
This would be the full sanitary sewer discharge from every property. That's your, collecting all of that. Okay, so alternative two. So again, we have a gravity sewer collection, very, very similar. And then on-site treatment. To a centralized local treatment area. Now, so for this graphic, we have a very similar looking collection. So you see the green line of the collection system flowing mostly downhill by gravity. We've done this for comparative purposes. We've shown at this particular location that is not fixed. That could change. It maybe goes here or here or here, or that's not set. It's just so that we can have something to do our costing and evaluation on. The system itself is generally, we're basically talking about a glorified septic system or leach field like you would have in your own backyard. It's bigger, requires some tankage, probably an equalization tank to dampen those peak flows, otherwise you gotta build something much bigger, so you have some tank there. To equalize flows across the day. We used a what we call here geotextile sand filter for the purpose of conceptual cost estimating, but like one of the Elgin systems or something. And what it is they have these housings that allow you to use less space. It's a little more infiltration rate than you would get in your conventional. Also, we know that shallow groundwater is very commonly a problem. So we'd probably be looking at a mounded system. So we took some of those things into account when we sized how big is this thing. And on here it's a small block, but it's a good size. It's something that's designed to treat 35,000 gallons per day. And then you're basically discharging to groundwater. And of course, it's all done according to the Vermont rules and regulations. So the cost for this, and again, so the collection system is very, very similar, about 3.2 million. The on-site wastewater treatment system is 2.8 million. And then you have your soft costs, so your design, land, legal, bonding, permitting, environmental screening, and all that good stuff for another 4.4 million. So this one comes in at 10.4 million. And I'm gonna jump to, unless there's any questions on that, I'm gonna do a comparative. So how that compares, so I just showed you two alternatives. One was 8.7 million, capital cost, one was 8 million and one was 10.5 million. And we have the no action alternative, which is $0. There is an annual operating cost, so like, for example, on the force main to the Troy pump station, you would have to engage in negotiations where they would set a user fee for you. We make some assumptions about what that might be. We don't know exactly, but naturally they charge all their users, and they would need to charge you something as well for the service that they would provide for receiving your sanitary sewage discharge and then treating and disposing of it under the permit. So that's an O&M cost. Comparatively, on the gravity sewer, when you're operating a large municipal, system like the on-site system, you have to have a person, you have to have an operator, and they need to be, they're basically checking on it probably daily or almost daily. You hope there's not a lot of repairs and maintenance enough to, you have to have an operator that can monitor it, make sure it's running right. Something comes up, that fix it, correct it, make sure everything's flowing exactly right. We did it over a 20-year period. We assumed interest rates. And we also included over the 20-year lifespan with the interest rate and the operation and maintenance cost, we can determine a present worth value of what does it cost over the life in real dollars today. And the result is the pumping to Troy is 8.7 million, whereas the onsite is 11.5 million. And of course, you still carry the no action alternative for $0. Yes.
In your calculation, were you able to calculate approximately how much it would cost each household?
That's an excellent question, and you're jumping right to the bottom line. And let's get to the point here, right?
Yeah.
And I don't get mad at me for passing the buck. When we do our 90%, we are gonna drill down on this much more so.
Okay.
We're gonna get into the funding opportunities, what can be reasonably expected, what does this mean for a sewer ordinance for the township, the village, which is, and ultimately your question, which is, what does that mean to me as a ratepayer? What would I expect to have to pay? So yeah, I'm gonna kind of defer that to our next meeting. And by the way, if for anybody, if you're scribbling notes, all of these tables and figures are included in the report that's going to be made available to you online shortly, as soon as we get through DEC and they give us the okay, we'll post that, should be maybe a couple of weeks. It's
Just your annual operating costs that you're carrying,
Yeah.
But that's not including the user fee that would come from the PJ Troy fund. That's operating this end of it, pump station this end of it.
No, it is, although I don't know what it is. So
But that is an estimate now.
that's an estimate.
And it's including what you tested me.
Correct. Yeah, and if it, depending as you get further down the road and you start to get into discussions and negotiations, but yeah, I made some assumptions. So. Yes.
Also, in this study that you've done, did you take into consideration all the work that Jake did with collecting flags and finding out where everybody's sewage is? As
Yeah,
far as
good
how
question.
difficult it would be to even connect anything?
We did. We went through a whole survey, Kellyanne also, and with Jake, and we spent a lot of time on site and researching each of the individual properties and trying to understand exactly what that would mean for individuals. Now, generally speaking, the alternatives, the collection system would include some type of a connection from the house. So whereas you now go, let's say, out to the tank and we feel that connection would be devised, so we'll go out the front to the to the municipal collection system, with the concept being that each person wouldn't be responsible. The capital project would, come on to, with permission. You have to sign off on the easement stuff temporarily to get that work done, but then would ultimately, the project would absorb the cost of making that connection.
Also, to add to that, those of us that are on a water system
Yes.
currently, did you calculate the differences between those of us on the water system and hooking it up versus those that are not on the water system? Does it add any extra cost to avoid those pipes?
No, not really. We do have separation requirements between water pipes and sewer pipes, and so you have to make sure you keep either 10-foot separation according to the 10 state standards, or you have to encase one or the other in concrete for safety purposes. But it should be, it should not affect like the feasibility of the connection.
Well, I'm talking about cost.
Or the cost, no, it should not affect. Yes,
So from the data that you've done so far, so how many homes totally did you go to and assess directly?
we have 59, total of 71 properties, 59 residential, 12 either commercial or multi. And I think we assessed, I'm not sure exactly the number, the majority of those. 150 out of 50,
And that's in the village area.
correct.
So what did the data, and I don't remember if I'm 30% off the top of my head. So what did the data say in terms of what was warranted, whether it's alternative 1, alternative 2, or 3 not doing anything? But what did the data essentially say from those homes? Because that's not all the homes, that's what percentage of homes was it that you assessed in the village, and what percentage of homes were not assessed?
Right, so about out of the 71 properties, over 50 were assessed. The assessments are, they were, part of the assessment too was a record search. And as Kelly and I mentioned earlier, a small fraction are actually permitted, which means they were post 2001, I think. So that would mean that if they're not permitted, most likely they're more than that many years old, 24 plus years old. The ones that are assessed, whether it's in good condition or poor condition, it doesn't really affect the cost of the two alternatives or the implications for two alternatives. The collection system is really the same in either scenario. We're doing a centralized collection, like basically a sewer main down the road. So the point is to connect to it. And then once the property is connected, how that's treated and discharged is an entirely separate matter. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, and just in terms of understanding, so I guess what I'm looking at is that, so what percentage, so do we have legitimate problems? What are the legitimate problems that we have? Like how many are permitted and okay and meet standards?
Yeah.
And how many are not permitted
Yeah.
and don't meet standards?
Yeah, there is the way to determine that, there's 4 standards for how to assess a septic system. Starting with the least intrusive, which is like visual observations of the lawn, and we have these squishy spots. The most intensive is where you're scoping and digging and checking and pulling and covering the D-box and doing a number of things. So a true assessment, that's what that would look like. So this scope of work does not include that. So if what you're kind of searching for is, did you observe failed systems that would indicate like there's an emergency, we must do this now? No, that's not part of the scope. So that data is not something we can report as part of this scope. Yes.
So,
Sorry, go ahead.
so bottom line, what are our identified problems that warrant doing either alternative 1 or alternative 2? Like,
Yeah.
Collectively,
Yeah.
problems, what are the identified problems from
Yeah.
the data that you have done so far?
Right, and that question really goes back to the heart of the matter, why are we doing this study in the first place, right? Why
Right.
should we even be doing this, right? This is real, and I'll let Jake or the board members answer the question, but this is really it's about sustainability. It's about having and it's about property value. If you have a sustainable system, you can rely on it into the future. It's not so much about, look at the problems in the past that got us here. It's more about, do we want to have a sustainable future? And do we want to invest in our property values? Because nothing hurts a property value more than problematic septic system, and you're in you're in a problem trying to meet code. And now you have your property value can plummet. But when you have, and if anyone who bought a home knows, what's the first thing you ask? How's your septic? And when you say, oh, we're on municipal sewer, oh, great, I like it, let's go. Let's take a look at that. Yes, please, by all means.
Just to be clear, there's Jen's question. Is that when we walked around, we weren't looking for bad things, but we were in the vicinity of where bad things could be. And we did not identify any systems that, oh man, I should have had my books, we didn't see any of that, right?
The goal of that assessment wasn't to go out and see if there are any failures. It's more for GIS, EWS. Just with the, it's the buildings. We're evaluating the existing systems. What their conditions.
I see that your neighbor in Montgomery, and I haven't followed it closely, but I just kind of kept an eye peripherally, and I see they were reporting failed septics and it was like more of an urgency. That's not this, that's not to say everything's good, but that's just to say that there's, we're not sitting there facing obvious failed.
A 16 on,
Correct. That's about what Montgomery, I believe,
but this is still high.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, and that's, it's interesting too, and I like doing these estimates, it's kind of a little bit nerdy that way. And next meeting, we're gonna get into more detail, we're gonna talk about. Like the Montgomery, for example, was very similar flow rate, a little higher, 37,000, we're 31,000. They have 150 users, we have 71. There's some comparatives and it is interesting, and you know, of course, how you treat and stuff is a whole thing. In the 90%, we're gonna get into more of that. We're also gonna get into the grant funding, which, and we were just talking before the meeting too. Montgomery, and not making any promises there, received 100%, mostly federal and some state funding for the capital part of it. For the 16 million, in fact, I think they had 17 million, if I'm not mistaken, they were over. You know, of course, you're still left with the O&M costs, right? So those don't necessarily go away, but when we're talking about these big numbers for capital, it's almost a no-brainer. Like, obviously, 70 people cannot foot the bill of $12 million. That's a given, right? I mean, that's fair to say.
Right.
Nobody's suggesting, hey, you know, let's split up 12 million amongst all 70 people. You know, $1 million a year for them.
So what you're saying is that the users are the only ones gonna pay. That
Well, it would be part of a sewer ordinance, but
you're gonna take.
typically that's the way it works. Usually in most, you know, sewer ordinances, you have a user fee and you figure out exactly how you want. Of commercials versus residentials and how people pay, but yeah, typically that would be.
I mean, that's where you deal with the water system.
Exactly.
Right, I'm just saying that's a big number. So-
It is, there's no question, that's a big number for a small group.
Or a system that hasn't failed. Or any sign of it.
Fair enough.
On that last big flood, I lived in the hole, and my septic took a big hit from that, and everybody's rushes down to me. So I can see in the future where we would need better, you know, definitely benefit us because it, you know, it's really impacted. But probably a couple of floods away.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because that's the time where.
I mean, yeah, 20 years I haven't really noticed anything, but this last spring, we made the basement extension flood, you know, certain things, it just, I didn't see it.
Yeah. That's a good point, and.
Yeah. Everything rushes, I mean, people in town have horses, all horse shit comes down the road and like. Hey, everything, like,
I know, I have a culvert that has all the bush shit coming in my property.
so yeah, and that's all, you wouldn't be using any other leach fields, right? They're saying it'd be all contained.
It would all be in the one single location, there's scenarios where you. Micro locations, but our concept is, yeah, we one single centralized. Is that
That was Lynette.
Lynette coming in?
Mhm.
We can hi Lynette.
Have yourself muted.
Should I have something muted? Okay, give her. Any other questions while we're waiting for Lynette to chime in, give her a chance if she wants to. And anything,
So this study, again, this thing, I've said it several times, is taking a look at something that that points out some possibilities for us. We may decide this isn't the time, but if it's not now, if it's in 5 or 10 years, the information that's being put together is still gonna be relevant. I'm not saying it will be in 100 years, but what I'm saying is that it's forward thinking. It's an opportunity we have to fund something that will be information that has value to the town. Regardless of if we do something. That's my opinion. That's for you guys, it's my.
that's, you know, that's a very good point, Jake, and I would also add to that having done this exercise and produced this planning document puts you in a position to seek additional funding, if and when that time should come. You've accomplished this, you've looked at it, you've taken a hard look. Without this type of a thing, you can't just go to the federal and state government and say, hey, we'd like to have $16 million, but with this, you can. So yes, it's a proactive, yeah.
I just thought of something, if we took alternative 1, if this went through, and we were connected to Troy's pump station. And something happened to the pump station in Troy, would it be our responsibility to pay for whatever problems they're having with their pump station?
Generally.
But the other one is just
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
option two.
that's a good question. Generally speaking, no. Okay, so they have to maintain and operate their own
Their own
equipment
brand.
and facilities. And they have to do it according to the speedies permit and make sure they maintain compliance. Indirectly, they could say our costs are going up and our users' costs have to go up too, but that would be negotiated. Now, the pump station. The Westfield pump station, yes, that would be part of your own, now we gotta keep this thing going, we gotta check on it. Keep the flow meters on, make sure everything's pumping the right. Like their stuff, no, that's theirs, your stuff here, yes, that's yours.
I would say that there would be allegations of Westfield. The pump X not down to control it. That's probably what the cost is gonna be, the allocation, and even though that we don't hit that allocation, they probably still will charge us for the allocation of what we were supposed to give us per year. Give them per year. That's just my, a suggestion, maybe So I own the property in Troy, and I have a building, no people in the house, I still have to pay the allocation. I tore the house down. And I still have to pay allocation for that lot, because I would have lost it for that property. So I know it ends the water system, and then design the water system. Those are options, each household. That will be going on well, and it's mine, it's profitable. It's just the same, if I have a good septic system, I'm happy with my septic system. I don't have to opt into it. Or is it gonna be a mandatory everybody's in?
There would be some discretion on part of the board, you'd have to establish a sewer ordinance and kind of make those decisions. I don't know, and unless there's any, I don't know if the DC has any rules on that, but I think there's some local discretion when we do the sewer ordinance.
Yeah, so that work is something that's way ahead of us.
Well, I mean, it would be like,
It's a
deciding
legitimate
if you're paying
question.
for a surety or something, right?
Yeah, because if you feel like, I mean, gee, I just built a new septic last year, now, you know, yeah, I get, it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm still doing it. Lynette, are you hearing this?
Yeah, I can hear, but it's a little fuzzy.
I wanted to give you a chance to, if you wanted to add anything in, we did a brief overview of the previous 30%. We walked through the 2 alternatives plus the no action alternative and the costs associated with those. And that's sort of the meat and potatoes of the meeting. We certainly welcome any comments you might want to add.
I think I'll save my comments on the report to the end. Does anybody have questions directly for me?
Does anybody have questions for Linda? That's question.
What's her role?
What's that?
She is representing the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation.
So is she the one with the funding?
She certainly probably has some good advice on funding opportunities and also, would be basically like approving whatever plan. So for,
Is there funding available right now for our saving the nature stuff?
did you hear that, Lynette?
So there's currently not any new grant funding available for villages. There are a number of grant opportunities available, and through the Vermont Village Wastewater Initiative website, I've listed all the grant opportunities that I've been made aware of. There are always new opportunities coming up, so it's sort of a little bit of question of you know, where does the community want to go, and does the community want to be ready to do something if and when funding becomes available?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lynette, this is Jennifer Grace. Thanks for being here. So you are the engineer on the Montgomery program, on the Montgomery municipal system, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so can you give a brief overview summary of how this compares and contrasts with Montgomery? And then the other part of that question is, what is the cost now that Montgomery, and this will be the difference between, because we're preliminary and this is supposedly feasibility, even though it seems like the planning has advanced. You could kind of give me a little bit of an overview between Montgomery and Westfield and what their costs are, user fees, current costs that they're paying. What is it, approximately 1,000 people?
I can try and give a brief overview. I haven't had a chance to digest the 60% report um for Westfield, so I can't really compare and contrast, but I can in general talk about Montgomery's experience. So Montgomery started with a different process. So they did a planning event where the town got together and independently um, through facilitated workshops identified that they needed to work on wastewater in their two villages. And that effort was called Montgomery Thrives. And they have information available on their website about that work and that work product. And as a result of all of that work, they started a wastewater committee back in 2019. And they were able to get take advantage of a lot of funding opportunities that were available at the time. So they've been able to get to the point where they are currently pre-bid, and they have right now about $1 million in loan on planning, but the design is complete and nearly ready to bid. My colleague Ashwak Arfawi has also joined us, so she's online. So if you have questions about permitting, she can answer those types of things. So the planning for Montgomery has changed a lot over the years. The project scope has changed a lot. They've had a number of different issues come up with like with Montgomery Village. They had the landowner back out sort of at the last minute, and they sort of had to abandon that effort. but they still are proceeding with the Montgomery Center project. And the goal for the user rate in that community is to stay around 1% of their median household income, which is in the magnitude of $400 to $500 a year. Their median household income is very, very low. In general, and the last time I presented with you all, we talked a little bit about rates and the affordability metric, and for a project to be really considered viable, fundamentally that user rate needs to fall into a rate of 1 to 2% of the median household income for the service area, or it is not a financially viable project. So
Thank you, that's really, really helpful, I appreciate that information.
mhm.
Probably haven't got to the stage of what we need income from the town. Not.
The whole town versus people this would get affected,
Right.
unless the whole town's paying instead of individual owners.
Right. Yeah, everyone's seen this is way ahead of where we are. It would seem a little bit like the water system that we use. Plus, well, not the whole thing, because hopefully we'll get some good funding. Would you say that Montgomery can start about all the funding that they need to build this?
I had said that when that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I had said earlier that it appeared from what I gathered that Montgomery had 100% funded for capital construction. Is that correct?
So they have what we call a whole funding package, but they are still going to finish the project with a portion of the project being loan that needs to be repaid through debt service.
Through a loan. So what kind of percentage out of the, what, approximately 16 million, they have a loan for?
The goal is to make sure the loan is around $1 million.
1 million out of 16, okay, so I stand corrected.
Slightly. Majority. They got a majority of funding.
Retired.
Everybody's mind is on trying to figure out what's gonna cost them, I mean, to me, being realistic. That your operating costs up here of 44,000 to 61,000 a year, you gotta figure you're gonna have to pay something on the install costs. Been in construction long enough to know that it's probably gonna land there or higher. We're looking at probably $1,000 a year, if you have 70 users, we're probably looking at a $70,000 a year budget to run the grant to. If everyone, but to me, this is me, you can correct me if I'm way off base, but I think it was to me like it's gonna cost about $1,000 a year per user.
You'd say order of magnitude, that's probably fair.
That would probably be higher than the 2% of the income.
Right, and like Lynette said, if you do start to grow beyond the 1 to 2% range of the median household income, then it's problematic. And probably costing.
So you guys, you guys, you know, when you put together the 90% and realize that the income and the budget itself would not be feasible, would you recommend alternative? Or you least will need still up to you?
It really is one of the next set, and we're gonna do it on the final stage. And by the way, Lynette, some of these questions about finances, I'm deferring to 90%, because as you know, we drilled down a little deeper into, you know, cost per GPD and cost per user, and some of these questions that we're starting to touch on now. We will, drill down a little deeper in the 90%.
Yeah.
And go more into this discussion. When we get to the final slide, one of the things is, the select board will make a preferred decision, preferred choice. It's not to say you're moving forward, but just to kind of close the report. Alternative, which of the alternatives is preferred.
So let's just be clear though, that if the select board says this is our preferred choice, the voters have the last say.
Right, you still have all your referendum and
Just want you guys,
you need to put it all on you.
otherwise you might see us hanging from the trees out there.
So, yeah, here, let me jump, I might as well. So, might as well jump to this stage.
Before you do, I just
yes.
have one question on the figures that you had.
I don't know if I can go
Yeah.
backwards.
That's okay, you don't need to go back.
Okay.
Did you consider the inflation rate of our country, in your calculation over the next couple of years, 5 years or 10 years?
Excellent question,
Right.
yeah, we did include escalation to year of construction through till 2030, I believe. So adding those sort of 5 years, and we assume we assume a 3% per year. Some of these years we've seen more like 5. So it's one of these, we can't predict the future, but yes, we try to account for the cost of inflation. So kind of wrap it up, this is our next steps. The public feedback on the alternatives, formal selection of preferred alternative. The 90% report in public meeting, which is approximately April, we've got that scheduled for, and like I say, we'll get into refined project costs. We'll take a little bit harder look at funding strategies. And we'll also get a little deeper into the preliminary financial and rate analysis, like how does that affect the potential user rates, and what kind of access is there to affordability and long-term financial sustainability. So we'll dig a little deeper into that, and then we'll also touch on some of the other hurdles such as environmental review and permitting requirements that would be necessary if you choose to advance any of these alternatives, which will culminate in a final report. And then if it is brought to public referendum, there would be, as Jake pointed out, a vote that's to be determined, may or may never get to vote. We've got some steps to get through first, and we've got some more public input to add first. So we're not quite there, but that's sort of where the next step.
Thank you for explaining that. So Lynette, either she can address it or you can add made a point, and I just want clarification on it, is the availability of grant funding, whether it is available or not available, what's the certainty? Well, there is no certainty, nothing is 100%. So with that being said, how would this relate to this at the 60% moving to the 90%, depending on the availability of grant funding, so the users don't get caught holding the bag?
Can I take that one?
Yeah, so that's, sorry.
That very briefly, the fee that we're paying these people for the engineering covers us stuff and things. Okay, so I don't know if I got your question right, but there's not gonna be a change in cost if we say, okay, let's just drop this whole thing down. We get a contract for $125,000 with this viewer. And that's what it's gonna cost us, no more. So we've gone this far, I think let's go to 100% and give the fund.
The 125,000,
Yes, that's.
what I'm referring
That's
to,
fully funded.
okay,
That's not that.
right, thanks for the clarification. So I think mine is you take the 87 million and then you take the 10 to 11 million, and then you have grants coming in. And I'm thinking more in those alternative 1, alternative 2, and the availability of grants coming through. To be able to support alternative one and alternative two is what I'm wondering.
Lynette, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Um, so most of the villages at the end of their planning stage, if they decide that they want to move forward into a design stage or even a preliminary design stage, they look for a funding source that is either a fully subsidized loan like the one that you have, or a grant source to be able to fund that design. Um, this is a really high statewide priority to have this funded right now. With the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for this current fiscal year, we have some staffing challenges and we've had to scale back the availability of the fully subsidized loans for the moment. But we are in the process of hiring new staff, and it may be possible that in the coming fiscal year that we are able to return to that level of subsidy for these projects. I don't know. Those conversations are just starting to happen right now, and the call for projects has gone out at this point. And so um, if Westfield um wants to make a non-binding sort of like uh declaration of interest, I guess, in additional funding, the state government and the treasurer's office do ask that we look at what communities are looking at over the next 5 years. So if you want that funding um, for design or for construction, um, there is a non-binding application process to sort of declare your intent, and then the planning around the use of the available funds happens. So I can make sure you guys got that application. If I don't know, LaDonna, if you guys remember seeing the email, it would have come from the Agency of Natural Resources through Constant Contacts. It looks a little spammy.
Don't recall seeing that.
Okay, I can forward it to you.
Thank you.
And as Lynette alluded to, these grant programs change. I think Montgomery had a pretty good chunk of RD money, rural development. And then I think also too, they were around COVID time, I think they got a good chunk of ARPA money too. I want to say they got.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was the set of programs in COVID time where it was funding for that. So I'm not suggesting we pray for a plan, a pandemic or but you don't know what is around today. You see, you keep your eye and see what's happening. And both the federal and state government.
I know back in 2001, the water system, we actually had similar, when you have permit from the West, but other towns and the water system to get funding. We were lucky, we got big approach, so we went. So, and we actually got it on mining things rate, 70%. So it was a good deal back then. So, but you still had to go to the bank and get funding to operate because there's no guarantee, right? So we were stuck with that. We were lucky we got it.
Yeah.
Everything worked out, but there's no guarantee. On this one, no guarantee. We will actually have to go and get a loan. So people don't realize it's like, well, the money's there, take it. No, you go get a loan and then it's funded.
Yeah, so, or,
Yeah.
that loan is often in the form of a bond anticipation note.
Right, but,
And which you might convert to a bond later.
yes.
But yes.
But the user should be on the hook.
Certainly for the first instance of payment and then you're counting reimbursement.
Well, yes,
So you're, so some of this.
yes.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But I think when that gives question, suggestion is a great one, you know, express your intent, get on the list. And it's a binding. And it's just what you can do.
I think the time that we did the design, we had, we had that. Because that wasn't covered, like, so, I mean, there's not being said, but there's a lot of responsibility to use this lab at a high cost. So.
Yeah, so that makes me ask a question. Contract with the judges, doesn't include. What does it include at that point? It's the usability study, but then it's ready for the next step. Like when you step away from this, it's ready for the design, it's not designed. It's not designed, correct?
Correct.
So then but it's ready for, if we hire somebody to design it, whether to or somebody else, once if we decide to do that.
Right.
This brings it to where they don't have to spend all of the, get the work done to take it. You don't get that right?
Right, this would form like a schematic, a conceptual plan, and then you would have to engage in a detailed design, which would typically start with like, you know, more detailed basis of design report, preliminary design, and final design, including the environmental reviews and NEPA and 1950 permitting requirements, you know, demonstrate compliance and all those.
So in
fun things.
and those estimates that you've given us, the design can include.
Yes, it's
It's an estimate.
it's included as a percentage of construction. Right, and similarly, there's a construction inspection expense too. That is included as a percentage, which is necessary, you know, for your own ensuring quality. As it's being built, and also typically required by you know, the agency, regulatory agencies. So, yeah, those are in the soft costs.
Would the town be responsible for the bond?
Well, that would be, but the voters decide, right? I mean, they would be.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, the town as a general, not just the inspection.
No, if it's part of the building, I don't know that. I mean, I've never done this before. So hopefully, if we ever get to that point. If we were, you know, there's never, like you said, there's never, I think that's 100%, but if we awarded grants that would cover. All the building, I bet. Nobody would be on the hook per se. I think the construction costs, if we were lucky, to get all of the construction costs. Covered, and then the annual operating costs. Then that would be just the users.
Because, I mean, you're sitting in a select committee and taking responsibility, in my opinion. When we did the water system, we involved the select.
Right, because it was.
Like fire trying to take it. Guys appear to be taking responsibility as selectmen. So I'm assuming you're the spokesman from town, you're taking the full responsibility as.
I guess if the voters voted to do that. then
When you say voters, do you mean
The entire town. would
or
vote.
the whole town?
What's the. What typically happens, something like this.
We're getting into some kind of legal questions too, which I think I would defer to your town council on this, but I think as far as the funds, typically what happens is the sewer district, we do set up.
See, that's
And
what I
the
would-
district can manage its own funds
Yeah.
separately from the town general fund.
Yeah,
And then there's authority given to assess fees, collect money, pay debt. And so like the district and the sewer fund would do that as a separate thing from general funds.
Yeah, they would be the ones responsible for the bond.
So that it actually, that it'd be similar to our water system. So,
Sounds, conceptual,
So-
sounds that.
so then. The selectmen actually don't have to say, it's the users that have to say,
Yeah,
so.
Because earlier you said the select board will pick an option and then we would vote whether we wanted it or not as the users. So now you're saying that we get to pick the alternate, the
Value.
options, not the select board?
The board. The board.
Right, we, us,
That's-
those of us affected by it, the users.
Rather say the users, it's not the
Right.
voters.
It's not the voters, it's the users.
There's a couple questions here, but,
I wanted to defer it back to you because what I heard you say, was that for the sake of completing the study, the select board would pick an option.
But after the study, it would be the users would pick the option and we may disagree with the select board.
Well,
Is that what we're
the-
saying?
The,
Not
no,
clear.
the vote, the public vote would be a referendum on whether or not to pursue, you know, a sanitary sewer system and the establishment of a district and things that come with that. And the vote, I think, can be set up so that it's either you could, I think, and again, these are some legal questions, you probably want to get a little legal counsel on, but I think it could be set up to be either just more simply the preferred alternative as determined in the report as, and as, you know, reported in this report. Or I suppose there might be an avenue where you could say, you know, pick the preferred option, but I think typically you would say, okay, we have a report, we have a preferred solution, put it to a vote. Yeah.
so.
So in other words, if we do that, yeah.
The votes.
Yeah, that's another good, yeah, good question.
And so if it was put in,
Legal counsel would.
Yeah, legal counsel will probably help us with
so to
that.
be
I think
clear,
we
if
wanna
the
get-
select
yeah.
board chooses the option. And we vote, if we vote no, we may just only be voting that option, even though we may want the other option, so we'd have to vote twice.
That would probably make sense for us to, well, if we're the ones giving the options, it probably makes sense to give the voters the option first.
The voters or the users.
Not
Well,
stay in this situation.
That's
But
why,
again, maybe we're stepping into the weeds a little bit right now.
Well, there's no dumb questions, it's just the ones you don't ask, so you've got, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Jake, so
No, it's
I'm
fine.
concerned about legal costs. Because this involved legal costs, I mean, it's applicable. You've got the village and you've got the users, which it feels like having responsibility versus the town, and then you've got. One alternative, second alternative, and third, no alternative. So, you know, I mean, it's a collective decision. Do you do a survey or do you do a preliminary survey? Yes, you should go back to council, so you want to do everything fairly and equitably. I mean, it shouldn't be all the selectmen, it shouldn't be all the village people. Do I think it should be a town-wide thing in my own personal objective opinion? Yes, I do. I don't want the full responsibility of that feels scary. Now, those are just my objective thoughts.
just one other thought to keep in mind is, this process involves a series of public meetings, tonight, it's important. And public input beyond me, so I think, and not to oversimplify, but. The simplest path is if you're debating alternative 1 versus 2, now is the time. You know, figure it out, talk to the neighbors, come to the meeting, whether it's these or the select board meetings. And you know, could this go further in terms of surveys and outreach and mailings and this and that? There's no limits on what we can, we have a protocol that we are definitely doing. But let's get that public input. And let's put hopefully very good information on the table. Let's look at it objectively, get our opinions out there, hear from everybody, and then hopefully build consensus so that at the end of this exercise, we can all say, well, if we're gonna do it, then that would be the best way to do it. And then we can put a ribbon on this, so to speak. And then carry that forward to the next step. That would be my suggestion. Let's have that public input now.
Because, I mean, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, not picking on you guys, but it should be the users. Are having meeting and determining where they want to go. Because, I mean, as we get it back to the water system, we set up the whole system, blah, blah, blah. But we never operate, we just set up, that's all it is. Now, some pay a lot more than others. Some use a lot. For example, I'll pick on rural edge. Well, they could pay a third. Because they consume a lot more amount of water. Than anybody else. So the user determine who was gonna pay for what, and how much you're paying. If you got one person living alone, they're gonna pay for it. But if you got a house of 30 people, he's gonna pay 30% more than anybody. So
Like a tier system. Yeah,
So that's how we determined that.
that's the water.
But it's the users, so I mean, if you really want to take this serious, I don't think it's really serious for you. It's at 60%, you come up with something. You have to have bylaws, you have to have the whole 9 yards, and you're gonna have a municipality.
You have to have an ordinance.
And this is like years down the road, or no, difference, one of the other. Process. Well, it's like, it's a process, yeah, but it's like, it could be neutral at 90%, and really you didn't see. Other than see that number, because you haven't really gotten to the point where. Well, the committee has looked at this and they drafted up bylaws, so whatever other towns have, and how it was going to be distributed. So when the users came up and we said, oh, Mr. Rural Ed, you're gonna pay 30% of it. We know what the consumption is. Based on input of your water going in, is your water going out? Right?
Are there any meters in this town for water?
Yes, everybody has a meter.
Well, have
But, yeah, so that's,
Just never used.
sure. So like you said, what comes in?
Well, the cost would go up because we'd have to hire somebody
Yeah.
to go read the meters. I mean, that's why, one of the reasons why we don't use the meters.
Oh, I thought you said you have meters.
We do, but
We do, but then we don't
read them.
use them.
Oh, I get it, but that, if there was a system, a source system, a wastewater system. It would be important to know what's going in, like, as you say.
Well,
If you're building
when
accurately.
you have the 25 years, I know who these are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they, so some, no, the sanitary is not metered, sewer ordinances are set up different, and fee schedules are set up differently. Some of them, many of them rely upon the water meter usage when there is a municipal water system. You don't really use yours, and we could perhaps explore the multi-meter, which is now what people are going to, and some different things like that. Others are set up by type of use, so there's single family versus duplex versus commercial, and you can have a rate schedule that way, so there's different opportunities. And there's a lot of good questions here about these like next steps. What I would say is let's definitely plan on continuing this conversation at the next meeting, and we'll come back with additional information to help kind of guide that discussion as we start to think about, ordinances and users and who votes and all these very good questions. So we can continue this. We don't have to answer everything tonight. Really good questions. Yes, please.
Back in a little bit. You have assessed Troy is willing to take our $35,000, or is this so conceptual, we don't even,
Please. So, Troy is willing to take, way before we even got to this. Pat Segway and I have gone to one of those Selectboard meetings. And at their invitation, because the conversation was, that they've got way more capacity. And they said what Westfield would produce, we need them to drop the product. So they'd be very happy with that. But that was a couple years ago, and we've never followed up with those conversations, but that we were reassured definitely, I think that. If we went back,
Okay, I'm curious if I moved with that. I know one time they were worried about it. It wasn't that.
well, they had, when the cheese plant was in town, you know, they had things and then were a whole different concept, so. You know, did I see somebody actually? So are there, I mean, obviously there's questions, and it's great to hear everybody's version of, you know, whatever the concerns are. Have you had any advance with some of them, some of them are not yet, very good games.
You know, we'll continue the discussion, but really good discussion tonight, though, we'll. Questions and.
You have an idea of our concerns.
Very much so, I believe I do. And I appreciate you being through. It's been very useful. Written comments as well, we welcome. If you think of something mild, you want to share it by all means.
Because I mean, there's no guarantee of any grant, any federal money in. So when it's initially numbered at the end. What the users are gonna have.
Well, obviously no brainer, no go.
That's
Right,
mine, really.
That's, so at the, right, so, you know.
And we're gonna come back next, like I mentioned briefly, when we come back, the next one. We're gonna drill down in more detail and look specifically at what does this mean to the users.
I like that, users fee.
Because that's what it is.
Yes,
I don't know if Lynette's still on or whoever, Selectman correct me, so, you know. It sounds like it's a little bit more of kind of a secure platform with the money that was got to do the feasibility study. And that's a little more fixed and certain, whereas when you move past the 30-60 into the 90%, and you just made a point, then we are dealing with realistically uncertainties of. You know, will we get this grant? How much money, and you know, just for everybody as a whole.
Yeah.
To ask that question, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, what you're, you know, to put it another way, we want to know, you know, we put a number up on the board, $12 million. How confident are we in that number, right? I mean, set rule 12 and that's 24. And number two, like, what's our risk? How much do we know that that's going to change? Now, part of that is complexity. So like, for example, when you look at like Troy Pump Station, you're eliminating the whole treatment master. We can just get it to here. That's it, we're done. And so there's a little bit more complexity. There's still complexity because, oh, well, we have a pump station and how we wire it and do the pumps and dosing and how do we get there? Is it gonna be rock when we dig? You know, we can't fully know all the answers to all of these questions. You know, we spend a fair amount of time arguing over whether we would do conventional trenching versus directional drilling. So we estimate it as conventional trenching. Now, we might come along and design and go, you know what, we looked at this and we think we can do directional drilling. The last, okay, great. Or wow, we did borings and we got on the ground. It's gonna cost more. So what you're really talking about is like confidence and risk, like where are we? But you're not wrong that, you know, so much of this relies on these construction cost estimates and total project estimates. And, you know, how confident are we? We also build in a 30% contingency. Just because we, you know, we don't know everything, we don't know geotechnical, we don't know a lot of things. As we refine as we get closer into design, we have preliminary and detailed design. We drop our contingency down from 30 to 20 to 15, maybe even to 10, because we become more sure, more confident. Yeah, it's about, you know, confidence and estimates, project budgeting, and it's about, you know, how much risk there is, and could be wrong, so how much. And there's different facts like complexity that lend itself to that. So we try to be conservative at this stage because we want to make sure that we don't want you mad at us. You said we do this for, you know, 11.5 million. It turns out it's costing us 14. Now you're mad at me, and rightly so. Unless there's a real good reason, right? Well, you changed this or you added 30 users or whatever. So. Yeah, we are invested in the accuracy and the reliability of the number as well. You know, more or less the same as you are.
There's also an added risk if we go to Troy, we're at the mercy of their rates. If they suddenly decide to raise their rates, you don't have leg to stand on, we have to pay it.
You gotta do a 20-year contract.
I was gonna say the same thing. You hope you can negotiate a long-term contract, so
So the contract.
they're limited. But you're not wrong. You gotta negotiate that, how good you can negotiate, or don't that expire.
There is so much between.
To me is, and also, if it's free money, let's just say, I'd rather have our own system. I wouldn't want to go to Troy. Let's do our own building, and then we can be responsible for ourselves. If you get free money, do it yourself, don't go to Troy. Yeah, you know, like, as free water meant that I get from my watching manager. So, you know, the guy taking care of the sewer gets free sewer. Okay, what a big job.
Right.
All right.
I want another job, Rick.
Yeah, fun.
And even as, you know, as goes up, even as an operator, so you're required to have a operator for the class, whatever it's going to be.
We have a class 3 for water, so I.
Class three operator for your municipal, sewage disposal. Work system, they have certain responsibilities and reporting requirements. You may decide you want to hire the operator from Troy.
Or we may send out one guy to his class.
Or that, hire your own guy, or hire their guy, who comes by once a day,
Yeah.
you know, the cost of a drive down, you pick up and this thing, so those are things you gotta.
Yeah, and actually, but testing the water is what. State, and so, you know, I mean, it's, well, you have to test them. So I think it's the facilities, I need to.
Water, and it's the same thing, they demonstrate the farming itself, yeah, the system. Yeah.
So at what point would, I'm really glad that all the questions is, because it's opening up some things that we, you know, haven't done before, right? So. Really like the comparison to the water system. So what point should we, well, could we have a committee established that people who would have skin in the game of this came to pass, for instance, who might be a little bit of research on how to establish, you know, this, whether I don't want to say, I asked you if you want another job, not just kidding, but would it make sense for a town like Westfield, if this came to pass, to have water and sewer, you know, the fire district to be in charge of both of them?
That would be.
That might be
right, because it's have to bind it two
Because
together.
of knowledge,
Yes.
the knowledge that you guys have working with this from these years. I don't know, but I guess back to my question is, at what point does the conversation begin to, how might this be structured? That would be some valuable information that comes to a time where whoever has the vote on this have to look at the picture. Maybe some of these things have been already invented, so to speak. We're not doing that, but we have some towns, a lot, maybe a lot of the towns that is when they call it as historical.
Right, yeah, ultimately you would, you know, establish a sewer district. But I think your question of, you know, a sewer committee, you know, public committee, I think is a good one. When that, I'd be interested if you have any thoughts. I was very interested when you were talking about Montgomery and where they had a publicly driven initiative and committee. Were there any thoughts on this question about a local committee, you know, contemplate this further?
I always think it's a great idea to have a local committee involved in the effort. It really helps to solidify the community's goals and vision with the project. We do have a little workbook on our village wastewater initiative page for communities to like look at how you would build a committee and the types of skill sets and viewpoints that are helpful in getting a successful project together.
Annette, what do you think about combining the water district with the sewer district? Make it one.
So some communities choose to do that, and it's an option for efficiency in governance. Um, and it's something that you can explore kind of down the road. Um, and it could have advantages in a number of ways. None of the villages that I've worked with so far have ended up that way. Sort of the closest um, that I've worked with in a similar but totally different situation was with the Colchester Fire District number 2, took on an initiative to work on a wastewater issue that was in their service area. They worked on it for a number of years, like maybe 15, before the town of Colchester took over the effort.
Interesting book to see, you said there's a manual or a book, something, is that something that's online or is it a, which is very. You can get a free copy of, you can find it. Yeah.
Annette,
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Jake's talking to you.
Did you hear that
Oh,
question?
sorry, I missed the question.
Just that it was being asked if we're interested in the document you're referring to, the booklet. What's the best way? Do you have hard copies you can send, or should we get that online?
That is, we basically made the workbook as a PowerPoint presentation. So it is available online through our village wastewater website, which I think I can drop in the chat.
Okay, we can send links to it as well.
So, okay, I know even.
If you have a hard copy, are you going to John's retirement party next week? At
Um, is there a retirement party for John next week?
John Roman, yeah, on Tuesday at 2 o'clock at Positive Pie. If you're going to it, I'm going to it, and you can bring me any of the pamphlets.
Yeah, so I have a number of different workbooks. The one for setting up the committee, though, is just a PowerPoint. I could print a copy, but it's not fancy like our other printed materials.
Okay.
But I do have other printed materials in general on how to do a project.
Okay.
Where's your chat?
So Dan, I brought in these questions that I sent the whole time. Do you feel like most of them are here tonight or more?
No, thanks for asking. Yeah, pretty much. I think it kind of was covered, as a whole, yes. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
If you have any more.
The only other part to add, and Lynette, or I'm sorry,
Okay.
is I have communicated with people from Montgomery. And there's been lots of different schools of thought over there, and I don't want to necessarily assume because what happened in Montgomery is necessarily the same case here. But I did speak with somebody who, and out of confidence and respect, wouldn't say exactly what I felt was like just understanding, like sort of like you made a point of like not reinventing the wheel. Well, Montgomery's dealing with it, so what can we get from people in Montgomery? But like there's people that were for it, people I work with doing markets, because I do a lot of work in Montgomery. I'm really involved in that community. So there's some people I know and they were very much for it, and a couple other people were sort of feeling this wasn't warranted.
Mhm.
And sort of, that's your data then, you know what I mean, your data, so there was a bit of controversy there. So how can we pull from that, you know, objectively, not to fuel the fire or anything like that?
Mhm.
But again, getting them from the fire district number 2 in Colchester. Okay, so this is what happened in Montgomery, well, they're 2 towns away, so
Mhm.
how can we use that information? You know, they had a planning commission, you know, what did they set up, how did they do it, how can we learn from that?
Mhm.
What works, what doesn't work?
Mhm.
You guys might also talk with Burke. They've been doing quite a lot on a much smaller scale.
Maybe even invite 1 or 2 members from the surrounding communities. To join
That's what I
your
was thinking.
committee, Burke, Montgomery, others.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Share their experience and learn some lessons.
Yeah, it's really good.
Maybe avoid mistakes that they have actually made.
Yeah, I'm at the point where it's easier for me to swallow it if I leave a whole town this way.
No, I agree.
You know, we looked at the scope of tax user, we looked at the operation of the town. Who benefits from what? Do I benefit from the road? For example, on Buck Hill? No, I don't. Town, I pay for a road commissioner that does nothing for me. He doesn't plow my roads, he doesn't do anything, but I pay for that. So if I looked at, if there was a way that the users could say, no, you know what, let's the town pay. So let's do a vote that the town will pick operation. Is that possible?
Well, and again, these are some legal questions, but generally, when you have a general fund taxation. And a highway, highway fund. That's set up townwide, but when we have the utility, user fee. I think the regulations have some rules and limitations to
Well,
get you into that usership.
yeah, process. I mean, towns operate municipal water as a town, not as a users. Okay, other towns, have, they may delegate somebody to do it, but the town, the selectmen set the rates.
Ed just gave us an example. Colchester had 2 fire districts for water and sewer, and now Colchester, the town of
Right.
Colchester is taking care of the sewer and water, not the fire district. So she just gave us an example of what we could do.
Okay, so, yeah, well, let's look more at that then, unless people can talk more about that.
It'd be easier for the town to pay for it. You can get there, put on a bond instead of leaves.
Right.
Yeah. Not, I'm just putting it on you guys.
No, it's good, Rick. It's good, Rick, that you're saying this. A lot of this wouldn't have come off, you wasn't meant here. And you really realize now you have experience in that kind of committee, and it's interesting that you brought that up, and maybe what Jen has been saying, it's really good experience for everybody here. To open up our eyes a little bit and look a little further, like they're all right.
Sometimes you can, that's what you wish for.
That's right. Nobody's wishing. I mean, right? I mean, if this study was done to see if it's feasible to do, and that's all the study was. So when I do
It may
understand.
come down to the town saying, as selectmen, we're all set, thank you. We're not-
It's not feasible.
On the town,
Dollar-wise,
if
the funding's not there, it's not feasible.
right, but you gotta understand, you're responsible anyways.
Sure.
The bond.
Right.
We may get the grants and the money down the road, but you're gonna be, the town will be responsible for the users.
So I remember something that when Nat told us at the last meeting. That typically, correct me wrong, if I'm wrong, when that takes 5 to 7 years, when somebody decides they want to move forward with this, doesn't happen tomorrow.
Well, it can, when we did the water system, we moved
That was
very
quick.
quickly. And it was based on, what was available. If they had said, hey, you know what, guess what, we're gonna have it in the next year or so, so then you move fast. It isn't like we're kicking the can down the road 7 years. It can be done fairly quick, or it could be 7. Operation duty is what you choose.
And finding somebody
Is
to
that
do the
fun?
project, first of all, is gonna be so. Somebody to put the system in. That's gonna be a while.
Yeah, it will take a while. Lynette, didn't you say, I remember having a conversation, are you listening, that this takes a while? I mean, I don't know if it's like 5
Yeah,
years.
the absolute fastest I've seen it go is 5 years, and that was for West Windsor's Brownville Village. Um, the slowest is Arlington that I know about. And Arlington has been going on for longer than I've been alive, so.
Well, you're young, so.
I don't know, I almost have 5 decades, so.
Oh, that's why.
Really appreciate this. This is really very good.
Yes.
Yes.
Not rushing out, but if we've kind of covered it, there's no need.
Next couple today.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you all
Right,
very
thank you
much,
so much.
appreciate all the good discussion.
That's all right, safe travel back.
Lynette, are you still up there?